Hey everyone, my name's Madison. Thanks for checking out my channel. Today I'm going to do a book review on The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is the first book in a trilogy where the army destroys the world with a killer virus that also creates vampires. So it's kind of dystopian meets vampires, which was fun. In this book, the army backs and takes over these experiments by this crazy scientist dude who, in grief over his dead wife, has created a virus that kind of mutates humans so that they will live forever. That's his purpose. Or that's how I would describe his purpose. And the army thinks, ah yes, this is a brilliant idea, let me take over that. So they fund the experiment and then take over the experiment. While this virus does prolong people's life, it also makes them a little bit grumpy and a little bit aggressive, and a tad bit dangerous because it turns them into something similar to a vampire. The army recruits criminals on death row to experiment on, and they also decide to kind of expand and start experimenting on this little girl, and they choose her because she doesn't have a family, and so she won't have anybody there to kind of protect her or miss her when she's gone. So they send an FBI agent out to go and get her and to bring her back to their super secret base in Colorado. Of course, this ends badly, and these vampire-like creatures basically destroy the world, or at least we think that's what they've done. They destroy the world. So then the story jumps forward about 100 years, and you're following this colony of survivors as they try to fight the vampires. This book is unique because the vampires are created by science, and that makes them inherently different than a more traditional vampire. They do not feel at all like Dracula or anything in an Anne Rice novel or, Edward Cullen. They are, when I was first reading about them, it felt kind of like just a zombie story. They're just like zombies that can jump. There are a few of them who are special and different, but for the most part, think zombies. Also, the tiny colony that survives create a very interesting culture and society around their own survival story, and I really appreciated that and enjoyed reading about it. This story touches on topics and themes like mercy, memory, grief, strength, and destiny, and what is your destiny, and things like that. Okay, and so now I'm going to talk about the things I liked in this story. What did I like? I liked the writing at the beginning of the novel. The author did just a really nice job of setting a melancholy tone, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought to myself, oh yes, this is going to be a fantastic book. I will say he doesn't maintain that tone throughout, but every once in a while his writing just takes on this really beautiful prose that sets the tone so well, and I did enjoy those bits of the writing. I also enjoy the way that Justin Cronin took and played with some of the ideas of a classic vampire. For instance, some of these vampires can kind of control other people through their dreams, and that has a very Dracula feel to it. He definitely played with that, giving the vampires aspects of classic vampires and also making these creatures his own. That was entertaining, and I appreciated it. I also really liked the character Auntie, even if she was essentially a caricature of like the old wise black lady that you find in literature like this, but I still thought she was awesome. Okay, now for some things that I didn't like about this book. As I said, I really enjoyed the first 15 pages, but after that, the author switches from that really beautiful prose to a series of emails that, totally lost all of that beauty and tone, and also didn't have any sense of authenticity. It didn't feel the way that people normally email each other, and so it really just knocked me out of the story, and I didn't like it. On top of that, that series of emails introduces you to the army as bad guys for the first time in the story, and I'm cool with that. Except that every single military character for the first 200 pages is a total douchebag. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, sorry. But I just don't like that. Why does every army character have to be a jerk? So I was so annoyed by this that I did a little bit of research into Justin Cronin, and I just Googled, does Justin Cronin have any actual military experience? Maybe not that sassy with Google, I don't know. And I found this really interesting article where he says no, he doesn't have any military experience, but that's part of why he likes to write about war, because he's never been to war. And so, okay, I at least appreciate his honesty. He also mentioned that most of the military people he knows are his in-laws, and most of them are Marines. And so that kind of explains why perhaps most of his military characters are a little bit off-putting, because, you know, stereotypical Marines do have a certain way about them. And I will just stress that is stereotypical. Okay. So anyway, I appreciated Justin Cronin's honesty. I appreciate that he doesn't have war experience and that kind of draws him to war when he's writing. I'm fine with that. I'm also just going to freely admit that when you see military characters again in the last 200 pages of the book, they're significantly better. They are more complex, more diverse. You have good guys and bad guys, and so it kind of, appeased me a little bit. But at the beginning, I almost stopped reading because I was like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. But it got better. I also didn't like that this book was really long, and it just didn't need to be. It's over 700 pages, and so much of it just drags. I was listening to a podcast recently where one reader characterized a book as indulgent, in that the author was indulging themselves and really they should just cut massive parts of it. And I kind of feel that way here. So many of the scenes didn't really fit with the story, and just really could have and should have been cut to make the story flow better, in my opinion. Because I'll be honest, a lot of the story is great, but it needs to be cut down. Also, I really didn't like one of the big climactic scenes in the book. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I felt that when you finally meet one of the big bad vampire guys, that the whole scene was just a complete and utter waste of time. And it felt like it was just a way for the author to move the characters forward a few hundred miles in a relatively quick manner, because this is essentially a journey. They're trying to get to a place in this story. And then at the end of that totally pointless scene, the author just randomly kills someone off in just the most ridiculous way possible. It just felt like a total waste of 100 pages, and I was so annoyed. And you still have 200 pages left in the book, and guys, I literally could have stopped. With 200 pages left in this book, I could have stopped and not felt anything about it. I did choose to keep reading just because, well, I only had 200 pages left, Okay, almost done. I also wasn't a huge fan of the vampires in this book. Because they're created by science, they have a totally different feel than regular vampires, and I personally think that the Dracula kind of vampire is way more compelling. These vampires really do just feel like zombies most of the time, and I understand what Justin Cronin was doing. I appreciate it, or I can appreciate the kind of story he was crafting, but for me, I didn't like it. Cronin does do some interesting things with vampire lore throughout the story, but it wasn't enough for me. Finally, the way that the characters defeat some of the vampires at the end of the story was interesting, but not really exciting. By that point in the story, I really didn't care anymore, and I'm just reading it, trying to get through to the end, and so I just felt like there were some really cool parts of this story, but overall, it wasn't for me. I ended up rating it 3 stars. I can understand why many people like it. If you are into dystopian fiction, this might be for you. I will say, if you're into vampire stories, this one might not be for you. Although I certainly would like to hear your opinion. If you love vampire stories, have you read this? What do you think? And if you love dystopian fiction, have you read this? What do you think? And I don't think I'm going to finish the series. What do you have, if you have continued on with the series, was it worth it? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thanks guys, bye.